we're going to be creating our service wrapper. So let's head up to File, New. We're going to be creating a Liferay module project. Let's go ahead and give our module project a name. So we're going to call it user-local-service-override. With that name, we're going to make sure build type and Liferay version have been consistent or are the same as what we've had before, Gradle 7.1. And then for the project template name, we're going to go ahead and click on the drop down, and we're going to be looking for service wrapper. So service wrapper. So confirm everything is good here. And once you do, go ahead and click next. So let's click next. And I'm going to keep the default name here. It's a pretty good name, user local service override. We're going to change up the package a little bit though. We're going to put it over in com Liferay training, user, and then service. Right. And again, at any time, if you need a little more time, feel free to hit that pause button. Next up is the service name. We're going to click on our browse button that lines up with the field. And using our nifty trick here, using the wildcard followed by dot, and then we can start typing what we're looking for. User local, and it'll select the user local service wrapper. From here, let's go ahead and click finish. So keeping the default package name, com Liferay training user service, user local service wrapper. And then we'll go ahead and click finish. So go ahead and give a little time for Gradle to do its thing. Maybe go grab a drink, pet your dog, right? Say hi to your coworkers. But eventually, once it finishes, let's go ahead and open up our project. We're going to head over to the source main Java, opening up the package, and then selecting the user local service override. Once we're here, what we're going to do is right click the constructor, and then we're going to select source, and then override/implement methods. From here, it gives us a pretty extensive list of all of the different methods in which we're able to override. And so the one that we're going to be looking for is add user with workflow. So add user with workflow. Once you find it, go ahead and check the box that lines up with that method, and just be sure that you do. It's a little bit small there. So once you have it checked, go ahead and click OK. And what's really nifty about this methodology is it fills out a lot of our parameters here. So all of the things that need to be passed are passed. And we also make a call to the original add user with workflow just in case. And so we have this comment here in the middle, which leaves us with something to implement. So let's go ahead. We'll delete that to do right there. Bump this down a couple lines. And let's go ahead and move on with our implementation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a very simple modification to our service. We're going to make a check to see what is the email domain that we're using. And we're going to only allow specific email domains through. So we're going to use our if statement, and we're going to be checking the email address. So the email address is a parameter that's being passed, so we can look for it. So if the email address contains, right, so if it contains anything with a @Gmail, for example, right, that's no good. We want a .liferay.com account or an @liferay.com account. Right, so if you got that Gmail account, that's not going to be good, right? But there's a couple of other email domains out there as well that we may not want. So let me bump this down a couple of lines. We'll take care of that a little bit later. So Gmail, no good. Let's get rid of a couple other ones that shouldn't be used. So not only Gmail, but what if there's another one? Like maybe, let's see here. Formatting is a little weird. So email address. What if it contains, let's try Yahoo. So at yahoo.com. Okay. Or let's try a couple other ones. Let's not forget that. There we go. Let's try a couple others here. Email address. Let's take it back to the old school. Let's say at AOL.com. I'm not sure who still has an AOL.com email domain, but hey, never know. And let's do one more. So email address that contains, what's another email domain out there? Hotmail. Again, another one of those email domains I don't see very often, but hey, you never know. I still remember my hotmail.com account I made a long time ago, back when I was but a wee teenager in the internet days. Anywho, let's make sure that whatever is going on here, that we have some way of knowing that, something went wrong if something does go wrong. Right? So check all of these emails, make sure that none of them are selected. So what happens if an email is selected? Let me work on my formatting here a little bit. So if an email is selected, okay, let me space this here a little bit. So let's print something out in the console. You must enter a work email address. Okay. Maybe another one. Your user will not be added. And then just to ensure that our user is indeed not added, let's throw an exception as well. So throw new, capital P here, portal exception. You must enter a work email address. There we go. Right, so very simple override here. So let's go ahead and deploy and test this out. So let's minimize our code here. And then looking over here on the right hand side, the user local service override, expanding that out, selecting build, followed by deploy. Right, and we're going to go ahead and wait for our deploy process to finish. Right, so build is successful. So far, so good. That's a good sign. But the console not flipping over is not a good sign. So let me connect to my telnet. And let's do a little bit of debugging. Okay. So we're going to need our kernel 3.0, or the portal kernel from our local instance. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to head over to a previous example. So our expando, going to open up the build.gradle over there. And we're going to be selecting the compile only file, selecting our portal kernel jar that's within our Liferay instance. So we'll go ahead and copy that, add it to our build.gradle, back over in the user local service override. So replacing our current dependency on the kernel version 2.0, and then adding our dependency from the file system. Rule of thumb, whenever you modify your build.gradle, make sure you always do your Gradle refresh. All right, so just waiting a little bit longer, and then let me make a small modification over in the class itself so that it updates And then let's try to deploy one more time. So letting it recompile, rebuild. Okay, so it still hasn't flipped over yet. Ah, there it goes. It's scaring me a little bit. So it has started up. Let's go ahead and test this out by creating a user with an invalid email. So I'm going to head back over to our instance of Liferay here. I'm going to refresh the page. Okay. So let me sign in first. All right, so over in the control panel, we're going to head over to the user section. And from the user section, we're going to be selecting users and organizations. And once we select users and organizations, once it loads up, we're going to go ahead and click on the plus button over here on the right-hand side. So waiting for it to load up. Right, and once it's loaded up, right, go ahead and enter any screen name you want. Let's try a Gmail. Let's see if this is going to work or not. Right, my favorite user, ASDF. Hey, there's my custom field there. We'll leave that alone. I'll click save. And I'm going to head back over to the console. We see nothing happened. We see my exception is thrown here. So very good. So this confirms our test here. All right, so very, very good. A very simple example of how we're able to override a Liferay service. Again, a couple of things we need to note is when we're overriding a Liferay service, we are typically going to always make a call to the original. Right? This is to account for anything that we may have not considered, or maybe we're just doing some minor tweaking here and there. So this is our example here of overriding a service.